Hey guys, I just wanted to give my early thoughts on Avowed, which came into early access today. We've been playing now for about 7.5, 7 hours, something like that, and gotten through a bit of the main story and a bunch of side zone and exploration. And obviously, a lot of people are asking, how's the game? Is it worth the extra money for early access? Is it worth the early? Sorry, I'm just very flatulent today. Is it worth the money for early access, et cetera, et cetera? So I'm just going to list off some quick pros, cons, and a bit of to be decided stuff as well, just because we haven't had enough time with the game. And in general, it's obviously very early right now to like give a final rating. Yes, spend your money. No, don't spend your money. For me, I'm enjoying the game overall a lot. So it's definitely has been worth for me. Now I got a free key to be fair, but I would say worth. But everybody has different opinions on what's good in the game, what's bad, where you want to spend your money, where you don't. But the game itself has been really fun. Chat so far has been enjoying it a decent amount. So yeah, overall positive. Quick pros in the game. Voice acting, basically everything's voice acted. It sounds good. The voice acting is actually quite well done, so that's really nice too. It's very immersive. The dialogue choices, speaking of immersion, you'd have a lot of different dialogue choices when it comes to the various conversations with the NPCs. And everywhere from being an ass to being nice to being mysterious to engaging in combat to whatever. So it's fairly open in terms of what you can do with the dialogue. And it's not, some games are like, oh, here are like two or three dialogue options, and they don't like really matter in what you do. It's just like three different ways to kind of reach the same conclusion. It's not like that in this game at all. What you decide can vastly change not only the dialogue outcome, but the quest outcome as well. Windows, but the quest outcome as well, or even what kind of like abilities you get in some sense for like one of your talent trees known as godlike. Which leads us into a quick discussion about talents and builds in the game. There are three kind of main trees that you focus on. It's essentially fighter, kind of like a ranged class, ranger I think it is, and a wizard mage casting kind of area. Everything is completely free and open. You can respec anytime. You can spec halfway into one tree, grab passives from another tree, and then just go full spell casting after that. So you can do what you want. It's really, it's great for that reason. The combat itself is pretty fun. Actually, it's quite fun so far. A lot of good visual feedback. It feels really weighty and meaty. So far, it hasn't been overly difficult. We're playing on the hardest difficulty right now. We've died like twice. Part of that is just growing pains and learning, but it hasn't been insanely difficult yet. But we're in like, level 3, 4 starting area kind of stuff. I assume it'll ramp up a bit. There is a lot of temptation to kind of explore a lot of different play styles. I mean, it's really cool to have mage spells, put up a shield, root something, throw out some magic missiles, and then switch to, I've been running around with two guns essentially and just kind of mowing enemies down while they're rooted by different spells. And, likewise you can spec into, charge and shield block on in the warrior tree if you want in the fighter tree. And then, but, use a wand to sling spells instead. So there's a lot of cool stuff with that. It's been really, it encourages you to just try a lot of things, and it's, like I said, very easy to respec and do whatever you want. You do have a companion as well so far, probably get more later. They have some basic companion abilities that also go on your bar, things like taunt this mob and heal yourself, and just a bit of extra support. It hasn't been overly important for your combat. You kind of handle yourself as much as you need, but it gets you out of a pinch sometimes, especially when there's a boss or elite chasing you down, something like that. With, of course, combat and whatnot go hand in hand with looting, right? Looting and gear and armor and weapons. There's a lot of different weapons types, at least so far. I mean, I haven't counted, but we're probably in like the 15 plus range already, from swords, axes, daggers, wands, pistols, like different types of guns, two-handers, axe, mace, I think we saw as well, shields. So there's a lot in the game. I expect we're going to find more. So a lot of variety that you can play around with. And like I said, it's really unrestricted. So you can be a mage that casts spells while wielding, a two-handed axe if you want. No problem. Go for it. You can allot your different points how you want in your 6 attributes, strength, dex, that kind of thing. They all are pretty global in terms of you don't go strength just for a fighter, and you don't go dex just for, strength increases all damage and carry capacity. Dex increases all action speed, so it affects all the different builds equally, so you're not kind of pigeonholed into, oh, well, I'm a warrior, I should probably go, like stam and strength kind of thing, like you do in a lot of RPGs. That's not the case here, which is really refreshing and nice. A lot of different, types of foods and herbs and stuff that you farm or that you gather out in the world, and then you take them back to your camp, and you can cook them into foods that give you buffs and different levels of mana or essence. The game calls it essence, and health return. So a lot of fun with that. And world exploration is the next topic I need to mention, which is really good. It's probably one of the best strengths of the game right now. Exploration has been fantastic. It's a lot of fun. It's just everywhere you go, there's something to do. You're running into a new camp or a new POI, or hey, is there a chest behind that waterfall? Yes, there is. Hey, is it worth going over here? Yes, it is. Oh, look, a random cave with like cobwebs all over. Oh, there's a spider boss in there. Spoilers. So a lot of fun with exploration, and the world looks great, like visually very appealing, and the music and everything in the background is really immersive. So you're just really encouraged to just go have a good time, chill, combat, explore, loot. The loot system itself is fairly basic so far. First of all, it's really easy to manage, so you can get encumbered. You do have a weight limit to your bags raised by strength, but you can just, with the click of a button, either salvage it. If you hold your button, you can salvage certain pieces of gear, usually weapons and armor, or you could just tap R and it sends them right to your stash in your base. That, as far as in your camp, not your base, sorry. That, as far as I saw so far, is unlimited storage in your camp. Camps where you go in general, you can go anytime, and it's kind of like a Baldur's Gate 3 style thing. Your followers there, and probably future companions, you can talk to them. This is where you do your upgrading of gear, which is fairly straightforward so far. You just collect basic mats out in the world, and you just use it to increase the stats on gear. And then there's uniques as well that you also just use to increase the raw stats on that piece as well, and then some slightly more rare mats. So the crafting itself hasn't gone like too insane in depth. I don't think it really will, but I haven't done it enough to give it a pro or a con on that yet. I was going to mention this later, but I snowballed into it. But yeah, you go to the camp. This is where you do your cooking, your weapon and armor upgrades. You talk to your companions. There's like a totem buff system there as well. And then once you're done, you can pack up and leave and go explore some more. There's a night-day cycle in the game, which is great as well. And this is, and at the camp again is where you can find all your stored gear, which you can either salvage or you could take to a vendor and sell for gold. And gold's used in, we've run into 8 vendors maybe altogether already. A bunch of, the typical, this one sells weapons and armor, this one sells, food and blah, blah, blah. So, but you can sell anywhere, anytime. And that about does it for all the pros, which there's a lot of good stuff. Last thing to mention, I already mentioned, the game does look fantastic. This kind of leads me a little into the cons. It's a lot of fun, but there are some issues with the game. For me, thankfully, they're pretty small issues so far. But as good as the game looks, there are some performance issues for sure. We're running around in the world right now. I'm on a 3090 with 5900. And we're on all maxed out graphics, DLSS performance mode, no ray tracing, and out in the world running around on 1440p. Out in the world running around, we're hitting, we're sitting like 70 to 80 frames, which is totally fine. But as soon as you get in a town, especially if it's heavily populated, it's like 40 to 50 frames. It gets a little rough. Obviously, I can bump that up if I start to turn some settings down. It's not that big of a deal for me. I'm a very tolerant person. It doesn't piss me off that much, so I can deal with being around town and looting some houses and stuff at lower FPS. But once we're out in the world, it's okay. When we have entered a couple dungeons, FPS is like 90 to 100, so it's like totally fine in there because it's just a small instanced map. But there are definitely some performance issues. You're probably going to need to play around with whatever settings are needed for your particular system to make it run a bit better. Like I said, I can probably get a fair bit more mileage out of, lowering shadows, things like that. I haven't tried it yet because it's good enough for me now, but expect that there will be some dipping in towns and stuff. A couple of other small quips about the game. The menuing's a little... You hit this radial menu in combat, it literally pauses the game. From there, you can select to eat food or use a potion or use an ability if you want. It's like it kills the immersion in combat a bit. Now, you don't need to do that. You can just hotkey your spells and fight normally, which is what I do. But in the radial menu, food is important. The more food you eat, the more basically a stacking buff you get of healing that gives you a heal over time. So all food contributes towards this. Same with essence, your mana. What I've been doing is just kind of loading up on it before fighting, so I don't have to open this radial menu too much. But it's a little jarring to like open this menu, and there doesn't seem to really be a cap on the amount of buff food you can have yet. At least we've had 6 different buffs running, so you're sitting in a menu and you're like, oh, this one increases Constitution, this one increases Strength. I'm gonna eat this one and eat this one and eat this one, and there's a bear sitting there ready to maul your face in a second, but it's paused. So you try to do this like ahead of time, but inevitably you can't just pause combat, and it's kind of weird. I don't know, not my favorite. I'm not sure how else they could have done. There's probably many ways they could have done it, but yeah, it's a little off for me. That's one thing I don't really like, but getting used to it or avoiding it just by kind of doing it before battle as much as I can. So I have like a food stock running that'll just heal me over time if needed. And then there's just some other small gripes with quality of life stuff. Obviously the map, like I said, is absolutely packed with POIs and things to do and chests everywhere. A lot of these chests, for instance, require lockpicks that some we've purchased from vendors, others you just find as like drops from monsters, etc. But it seems like I'm finding more chests than I can get lockpicks for, so I'm trying to make a mental note of where they are on the map, because the map just doesn't allow pinning. I would love to be able to put little markers or pins down to be like, when you get enough lockpicks, come back to this chest, or, oh, there's like a boss here, I want to come back later. You can't do that. So that's hopefully some QL they add in the future. I've just basically resorted to opening up a notepad on the side and just taking notes to remind myself to, well, go back to this chest, like 10 hours ago, and once you have some lockpicks, then check in on it. And another small thing, you find a lot of common swords or common weapons or whatever that are just dupes. Like constantly, we found like eight common spears by now. It's the same common spear every time. The only difference would be if we start upgrading it, like I mentioned at the camp. So there's no, like, so far at least, there's no randomization of stats on gear that you'd find in some other RPGs. So you have 8 of the same spear. What do? You either send it to your camp, like I said, or you salvage it, which is no problem. It's nice, but when you run into the 9th spear on the ground, you just kind of want to salvage it right away, but I haven't found a way to, so you got to loot it first, open up your inventory menu, go from there, salvage it, close your menu, return to the game. So is that like a huge deal? No, it's just a little, cuts the gameplay up a bit, a little immersion breaking, a little annoying when you're looting too many things constantly. There's certainly not like an over influx of loot. It's not like every 5 seconds there's an herb to loot or something like that. In my opinion, it's pretty tastefully done, but you are going to run, especially if you're like me that likes to explore every corner of the world and find every piece of loot and whatever. You're going to run into a lot of like duplicates, and it's going to get a little like, okay, here we go again. Open the menu D, the 10th spear, and go from there. So, a couple of things I haven't mentioned, just because they don't really fall in a pro or con category yet for me, because it's too early to tell. The story is interesting so far, but it's not good or bad. It's like in development. I said we've played about 7 hours, but in reality, as far as main story goes, we've probably only done about 2-3 hours so far because we've been so busy exploring side quests. The side quests that have existed in terms of story have been nice little stories on the side. They haven't been boring. They've been like, so they've been neat to do. So I guess that's a pro thing, but the story overall, the main story is, we'll see. Ask me again in 20 hours and then 40 hours and then whatever from there. Another thing is mob variety. We've come across maybe 6 to 8 mob types. You got like bears, spiders, lizard people, etc., etc. We started to see a lot of them. This isn't like a bad thing or a good thing yet. It's going to be a pro or con once we're 40 hours into the game. And once we're 40 hours into the game, are we still seeing the same 6 to 8 mob types? If the answer is yes, okay, right? If it's supposed to be a big game, a lot of variety, etc., if you're still seeing the same bears, at the end of the game, it's kind of like not so great. But right now, it's just something to keep an eye on, so that's why I didn't really put it in a good or a bad category. And I already talked about the crafting. Like I said, not good, not bad. It's very simplistic. I don't know if it's going to get any more complex or not. It's pretty straightforward. There's not much excitement to it. It's just basically collect iron, collect wood, collect whatever you need. Upgrade this, let's say sword that does 20 physical damage to the next level. Now it does 22. Now it does 24. Now it does 26. Now you need some extra special mats to bump it to the next quality from common to green. I forgot exactly what it's called. Do the same thing. Green levels 1, 2, 3, then go blue levels 1, 2, 3, and then you go purple levels 1, 2, 3, and so on. And it just increases its damage every time. So it's not the most exciting, but you do see the numbers immediately. I mean, we upgraded our wand like one time just for a tutorial thing, and immediately just noticed the amount of damage that was going to mobs, and the amount of hits it would take to kill like a little spider or something just went down a fair bit, even just for one upgrade at the time. That's about... Oh, and then final note on difficulty. I mentioned it already. We're playing on the hardest difficulty right now. This is not meant to be like a flex thing or anything. I don't know how it is in lower difficulties, but I like to have a challenge and have a bit of resistance. And we've died twice so far. One was to a boss once, and that was fun, and we learned and killed the boss the next time. But overall, the combat on the world, I can't really say has been very difficult. It's always interesting with these games because they often, like open world or even open zone game like this, it's not a full open world, it's more like God of War kind of thing. It's really hard to gauge difficulty, right? Because do you tune it around someone like me that goes and loots every corner of the world, and then I get a bunch of experience and it becomes naturally easier because, well, I just have more player power than intended when I get to a story point? Or do you tune it around people that ignore most of the side content and just do the main story, right? If you tune it around me, then the people that are just doing the main story are then going to be forced to do optional content, and it's not optional anymore. So, you know, I'm cognizant that some of the claims I have about it not being that hard yet are because I'm level 3, 4 fighting level 1, 2 mobs already, right? Because I've just explored a lot and done a lot of side quests, and that's probably going to continue to be the case. I do hope that what games do with this is they usually add some kind of optional difficult bosses, or, you know, there's some kind of nod to like, okay, this guy's really overpowered, but here's a boss that we expect players like that to face. So hopefully we'll come across something like that. But right now, and another thing to note is we're very early in the game, so how difficult can like a bear be, right? Or like a little spider? Usually not very difficult. So just even the mob like quality or difficulty or the kind of moves that they have are usually not very complex at this point in the game. So keep an eye on it. We'll see how it is. And that's about it. About 7.5, 8 hours in, something like that. So we'll check in again on in a few more hours. It'll probably be next week because this weekend, unfortunately, we have to take a little gap from the game. So we'll be back playing it Monday again. So, you know, Monday, Tuesday, we'll give another update how it'll look 20, 30, 40 hours in. And we'll go from there. But the game itself seems to be very big. I mean, we've explored like a third or a quarter of the first major zone of the game. And I think there's probably going to be like 4, 5, 6 of them, something like that. So lots to do. But so far, so good. Really enjoying it. It's hard to give like an out of 10 rating. Personally, I'm having like an 8.5, maybe even 9 out of 10. Does that mean that's the quality of the game overall in the end? No. And I don't know, maybe you're someone that really focuses on, you know, if a game dips below 60 FPS, it's an automatic 0 out of 10 for you. I don't know, right? Everyone's different. But I'm personally enjoying it a lot. There's definitely some issues with it, but they're pretty small and things that I can easily overlook while I enjoy all of the overwhelming pros for me so far. But we'll see how it goes in a few more tens of hours from now. So hope this helped you make a decision early on, or at least keep an eye on it if you wanted to pre-order or not, or even just play it in the future whenever you end up watching this video. And I'll see you guys later. By which I mean right now, because I'm returning to playing the game. Take it easy.